far away, in a time before writing, before metal, before towns, there stretches a wide arc of land, from the eastern shores of the Mediterranean, across the valleys of the Tigris and Euphrates, to the rising foothills of the Zagros and Taurus mountains. This region becomes known as the Fertile Crescent. Its shape is curved like a bow. Its soils and rivers nourish wild grasses, trees, and herds of animals. In these landscapes, humanity begins a transformation unlike any before. The world is changing. The Great Ice Age, which held much of the planet in cold grip for tens of thousands of years, is drawing to a close. Glaciers withdraw northward, leaving behind raw earth and fresh rivers. Rain falls in patterns not seen for many millennia. Where once there were cold steppes, now valleys green with forests and meadows. In the heart of this change lies the Fertile Crescent, where contrasting environments meet. River valleys run beside arid plains. Seasonal rains nurture fields of grass. Mountain snowmelt flows into lowland basins. It is here that wild ancestors of wheat and barley scatter their seeds on the wind. Fields of einkorn and emmer wheat grow in clusters along the Levantine hillsides. Barley thrives where river floods recede. Almond and pistachio trees bear fruit on the slopes. Lentils and chickpeas sprout between stones. The abundance is not uniform. It shifts with season and rain. Yet, compared to the harsher deserts beyond, the Fertile Crescent offers a rhythm of life that draws both humans and animals into its heart. Hunter-gatherer bands move across this land. They follow gazelle herds along open plains. They fish in streams rich with carp and catfish. They pluck figs from trees and dig roots from damp earth. Among their foraging, they begin to gather grains. At first, it is casual. They cut stalks with stone blades, bundling them with grasses. They parch seeds by fire, grind them with stones, and bake flatbreads on hot ash. Slowly, these practices become regular. Wild cereals, once scattered, now become central to survival. Archaeologists uncover traces of these first steps. At sites such as Ahalo II on the Sea of Galilee, charred seeds of barley and wheat, dating back nearly 23,000 years, are found preserved. Grinding stones bear the polish of repeated use. Hearths contain ash from meals long forgotten. This evidence tells of people already experimenting with plant foods long before true farming begins. The Fertile Crescent, with its mixture of environments, provides both the raw materials and the inspiration. The rivers themselves shape the story. The Euphrates flows wide and shallow, shifting course across plains. The Tigris runs swift, cutting channels into soft earth. Their floods deposit silts, renewing fields each season. Yet they also carry danger. Sudden torrents sweep away settlements. Marshes spread, breeding insects and trapping unwary travelers. Alongside these rivers, people learn to adapt. Camps are built on higher ground, near reliable springs, where reeds and palms grow. The rivers are both giver and taker, but always central, step by step. Human groups remain longer in these favored places. They build huts of brush and stone. They dig storage pits into earth. They bury their dead nearby, marking connection to place. This is not yet farming. It is not yet permanent settlement. But it is the beginning of attachment to land, the rhythms of rivers, the return of wild cereals, and the cycle of animals draw them back each year. Patterns form, memory forms, tradition forms. The planetary scale sets the background. As the Ice Age wanes, sea levels rise by more than 100 meters. Coastlines shift inland. Forests spread where tundra once lay. Across Eurasia and Africa, species shift their ranges. In the Fertile Crescent, the meeting of diverse climates compresses variety into small space. Within a journey of days, one moves from dry steppe to oak woodland, from river marsh to high mountain meadow. This compression of environments gives humans opportunities to sample, to experiment, to compare. Few other regions of Earth offer such density of potential resources. Still, mysteries remain. Why here and not elsewhere? Did farming first emerge? Grains grow in many regions. Animals wander in many plains. Some researchers suggest that chance played its part. Others argue that the unique combination of cereals in the Fertile Crescent, nutritious, storable, easily domesticated, made the difference. Another puzzle lies in timing. People gathered grains for thousands of years before sowing them deliberately. What sparked the shift from gathering to growing? Climate stress, population pressure, or cultural innovation? The answer is debated still. Among the lesser-known details are the beads and ornaments carried across these lands. In caves near the Levant, archaeologists find marine shells, transported over 100 kilometers from the coast. Obsidian tools from Anatolia appear far to the south. These objects tell of networks, of movement, of exchange. Even before farming, human groups maintain ties across distance. Ideas, like seeds, travel with them. The Fertile Crescent is not only fertile in soil, but fertile in culture. As people sit by their fires, watching sparks drift into night air, they look out across landscapes rich yet unpredictable. The stars above mark seasons. The moon marks tides of time. The rivers murmur as they flow, carrying life along their bends. Here, between two rivers, the stage is set. Human groups gather, linger, and return. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, their relationship with land deepens. What begins as gathering will one day become cultivation. What begins as camp will one day become village. What begins here will shape the destiny of humanity. The Fertile Crescent is not a single place, but a mosaic of lands. The Levantine corridor links Africa with Eurasia. Northern Mesopotamia holds plains that stretch far into horizon. The foothills of the Zagros collect winter snow and spring rain. Each part contributes a thread to the story. Over centuries, people weave these threads together. They carry seeds from one valley to another. They move flint from one ridge to another. Slowly, connections expand. Out of many fragments, one great transformation grows. The first section of the story rests here, in the land between rivers, under shifting skies, along fertile soil. The Ice Age fades, the rivers flow, and humanity begins to pause long enough to notice, long enough to remember, long enough to change. The great turning point begins with climate. For tens of thousands of years, ice sheets stretch across northern lands. They hold enormous volumes of water, locking oceans low and drawing winds cold across continents. The Fertile Crescent, though far from the ice, feels the weight of these global patterns. Dry winds sweep across plains. Rain falls in narrow belts. Grasslands open and close in shifting cycles. But as the ice retreats, the rhythms begin to change. Around 12,000 years ago, the last major glacial period ends. Vast walls of ice covering Europe and North America shrink. Glaciers pull back into mountain valleys, leaving scars of rock and silt. As meltwater pours into seas, coastlines redraw themselves. The Persian Gulf, once a wide plain, slowly floods. The Mediterranean shifts, carving new shores. In this changing world, the Fertile Crescent becomes one of the richest zones on Earth, balanced between wet and dry, stable and unstable. Step by step, the climate warms. Summers grow longer, winters less severe. In the Levant, oaks and pistachios spread over hills. In Mesopotamia, rivers swell with seasonal floods. Grasslands thicken, nurturing herds of gazelle, aurochs, and onagers. Where humans once wandered through harsh steppes, they now find valleys rich in food. The transformation is not sudden. It comes in pulses, warmer decades, cooler interruptions, rains shifting north, then south. Yet across centuries, and the trend is clear. A gentler climate opens the door to new ways of life. Archaeological traces show how communities respond. Around this time, small hamlets appear, made of stone and mud, clustered near springs. The Natufians in the Levant build semicircular houses, set with hearths and storage pits. They bury their dead beside homes, marking deeper ties to place. Grinding stones increase in number, suggesting more plant food in the diet. These sites show people no longer moving constantly. They begin to stay, season after season, taking advantage of new abundance. But abundance is fragile. One lesser-known episode marks the end of this warming phase, the Younger Dryas. Around 12,900 years ago, global temperatures suddenly fall again. For more than 1,000 years, cold and dryness return. Glaciers advance slightly, rains falter. In the Fertile Crescent, lakes shrink, grasslands retreat, and herds scatter. For humans, this disruption brings stress. Settled communities face scarcity. Some abandon villages, returning to mobile life. Others experiment further with plants, tending stands of wheat and barley near their camps to secure food. This brief return of cold may, paradoxically, push farming forward, forcing people to manage resources more deliberately. On a planetary scale, the shifts are immense. Melting ice changes sea levels by tens of meters within human lifetimes. Entire coastlines vanish beneath rising water. In South Asia, the Bay of Bengal expands. In Europe, the North Sea floods plains once walked by hunters. In the Middle East, the Gulf grows, swallowing river valleys. The Fertile Crescent, caught between desert and sea, becomes a refuge. Its rivers and mountains hold on to moisture while surrounding regions turn dry. In this refuge, people adapt in ways that will ripple across the world. The mystery remains, how did human groups perceive these changes? Without writing, their thoughts are lost. Did they notice patterns of cooler winds or shifting stars? Did they watch shorelines creep inland, wondering at the encroaching sea? Archaeologists find no clear answers. Yet the evidence of settlements, tools, and seeds suggests that they adapted with awareness and ingenuity. They did not control climate, but they adjusted their lifeways within it. One small but telling detail emerges from sites in northern Syria, caches of wild barley, stored in pits beneath floors. The grains are carefully selected, stripped of husks, and preserved for months. Such storage suggests forethought, planning beyond the immediate season. It is a glimpse of human minds grappling with instability, securing sustenance against uncertain rains. These pits are among the earliest signs of surplus, the seed of what farming societies will later perfect. Rivers remain central. Each year, snow from Anatolia melts, feeding the Euphrates and Tigris. Flood waters spread over plains, leaving behind fertile silt. In good years, these floods enrich wild fields of grain. In poor years, they wash away soil or dry too soon. Communities learn to read the rivers, the rise of spring waters, the color of mud, the migration of fish. These observations become part of tradition, passed through generations. Without written records, memory itself becomes the guide. As the Younger Dryas ends around 11,600 years ago, warmth returns more steadily. Forests regrow, animals multiply, and humans once again settle widely. But this time, the pause in their expansion leaves a lasting mark. Experimentation with grains, begun during hardship, continues into abundance. Where once seeds were gathered, now they are planted. Where once hamlets were seasonal, now they are permanent. The shift in climate sets the foundation for farming itself. The Fertile Crescent stands as a microcosm of the planet. Its people are buffeted by global forces they cannot see, melting ice in distant lands, ocean currents shifting thousands of kilometers away. Yet their responses are local, rooted in valleys and hillsides. From these small adjustments, great transformations emerge. Climate shapes opportunity. Opportunity shapes culture. And culture, in turn, begins to reshape the land. The end of the Ice Age is not only a story of retreating glaciers, but of human persistence. Through warming and cooling, flood and drought, people adapt. In doing so, they set in motion the long journey from forager to farmer. The story of agriculture begins not with a single discovery, but with centuries of living within change. In the land between rivers, under shifting skies, humanity learns to anchor itself more firmly in place, step by step. The people of the Fertile Crescent deepen their bond with plants that grow across the hills and valleys. Long before farming, they are gatherers. They move through landscapes rich with wild cereals, bending stalks of wheat and barley, cutting them with flint blades, and binding them into bundles. Seeds are carried back to camp, where they are roasted, ground, and stored. This simple act, repeated year after year, plants the roots of transformation. Wild grasses spread widely in this region. Einkorn wheat grows on the slopes of southern Turkey. Emmer wheat thrives in wetter lowlands. Barley clings to river edges, hardy in salty soils. These grains ripen at slightly different times, offering a sequence of harvests across the seasons. For gatherers, this variety is a gift. A group may move from one stand to the next, always finding another patch ready for collection. Over time, they learn the qualities of each grain, the taste, the storage life, the ease of grinding. Archaeologists trace their footprints in the soil. At Abu Huraira on the Euphrates, charred seeds of wheat, rye, and barley are found in layers spanning thousands of years. Grinding stones there, worn smooth, speak of continuous use. Seeds trapped in plaster floors reveal what fell as meals were prepared. The evidence shows that wild grains were not an occasional food, but a staple woven into daily life. Yet gathering is labor. To collect a basket of grain, people must cut thousands of stalks. Each ear holds only a handful of seeds. Threshing, winnowing, and grinding demand hours of work. Still, The reward is great: dense calories, stored for weeks or months, sustaining people through lean seasons. Compared to fruits or meat, grain offers stability. Slowly, this stability begins to reshape settlement. Mysteries linger. Why did these people choose to invest so much energy in such demanding food? Some scholars suggest climate stress narrowed other options, pushing reliance on grain. Others argue that taste, nutrition, and storability made cereals uniquely valuable. Another question lies in the plants themselves. Wild wheat and barley shed seeds easily, scattering to the wind. But as humans collect and resow, they may unconsciously favor plants that cling to their seeds, making harvest easier. Over generation, human hands begin to guide evolution long before intentional farming is known. A lesser-known detail comes from the discovery of sickle gloss. Stone blades found in Natufian sites bear a sheen formed by repeated cutting of stalks heavy with silica. This gloss is microscopic, invisible at a glance, yet unmistakable under study. It is a silent record of hands harvesting grain, season after season. The gloss tells us that gathering was not casual, but systematic, a practiced routine in communities tied to the land. Planetary forces frame the background. As glaciers retreat, atmospheric carbon dioxide rises, enriching plant growth. Forests expand into northern latitudes, while grasslands in the Fertile Crescent flourish with new vigor. These global changes ripple into the lives of small groups by rivers and hillsides. The abundance of wild cereals is not only a local gift, but a planetary consequence of climate turning warmer and wetter. At their camps, people grind grain on heavy stones, mortars and pestles, sometimes weighing tens of kilograms, are set in the ground and passed from one generation to the next. Children learn by watching elders, placing seeds into hollows, pounding rhythmically until flour forms. Hearths glow with embers as dough is spread thin and baked on hot stones. The aroma of fresh bread, even in this early form, becomes part of human memory. Storage pits deepen this relationship. Seeds are poured into lined holes, covered with ash or stone to keep out pests. In some cases, pits are sealed with plaster. Months later, when winter comes or game grows scarce, the grain is retrieved. Such storage marks a change in time perception. Food is no longer consumed only in the present. It is held for the future, carried across seasons, linking past labor with tomorrow's meal. Still, risks remain. Grain spoils if damp. Rodents burrow if guards fail. Entire stores can be lost to mold or insects. The uncertainty teaches lessons. Better storage methods evolve. Camps are chosen near dry ground, where pits stay safe. Clay-lined baskets and woven containers appear. These small innovations, born of necessity, slowly accumulate into a culture of resource management. Beyond sustenance, grains carry meaning. At burial sites, archaeologists find traces of seeds sprinkled among the dead. Whether offerings or simple remains of meals, they suggest symbolic value. Perhaps grain, with its cycle of death and rebirth, is seen as a mirror of life itself. Each kernel buried in soil vanishes, only to rise again as a stalk heavy with new seed. For early people, this pattern may hold mystery, hinting at forces larger than themselves. The practice of gathering spreads knowledge across landscapes. Groups exchange not only shells and obsidian, but also seeds and tools. A stone sickle found far from its quarry or a grain type appearing outside its natural range, speaks of contact and movement. The Fertile Crescent becomes a web of pathways, with ideas flowing as steadily as rivers. In this web, the habit of gathering grain becomes a tradition shared across valleys and hills. Step by step, gathering shifts human lives, camps last longer, populations grow modestly. Supported by steady food, social bonds deepen, tied to shared labor at harvest and shared meals at hearths. The cycle of grain begins to anchor culture itself. What was once one food among many now becomes central, shaping how people live, where they stay, and what they remember. In this slow process, nothing dramatic marks the turning point. No invention is sudden, no decision deliberate. Instead, thousands of small actions accumulate: a stalk cut here, a seed ground there, a pit filled with grain for the coming season. Over centuries, these gestures bind humans to plants. Out of this bond, farming will one day emerge. But in this section of the story, they remain gatherers, their lives guided by the ripening of wild fields and the patient labor of harvest. The world around them is vast. Oceans rise, deserts shift, forests spread. Yet in the Fertile Crescent, the sight of golden grass bending in the wind becomes the constant. People walk among the stalks, listening to the rustle, cutting and binding, carrying seed back to camp. They may not yet know it, but in their hands lie the beginnings of agriculture, and with it, the course of human history. The gathered seeds are only the beginning. To transform wild cereals into meals, people must harness fire and stone. In the camps scattered across the Fertile Crescent, glowing hearths and heavy grinding tools become as essential as spears and bows. Around them, daily routines unfold, shaping human life in new ways. Fire has long been a companion. For hundreds of thousands of years, it warmed shelters, lit dark caves, or cooked meat. But now, in the age of gathering grains, its role deepens. Raw seeds are tough. Their husks resist chewing, their nutrients locked away. A small pile of wheat kernels, swallowed whole, passes through the body with little gain. Yet when exposed to flame, when parched or roasted, the seeds change. They crack open, soften, and release energy. Fire turns scattered grasses into food. Near rivers and hillsides, people build hearths from stone and clay. Some are simple circles, others shallow pits lined with mud. Within them, flames dance, fueled by wood, reeds, or dung. As seeds are poured onto hot stones, they pop and darken. A nutty aroma fills the air. The meal becomes not only edible, but desirable. Fire makes grains central to taste, habit, and memory. Grinding stones complete the transformation. Seeds roasted in fire are ground on flat slabs of basalt or limestone. A handheld stone is pushed back and forth, crushing kernels into meal. The rhythm is steady, slow, demanding hours of work. Archaeologists uncover these querns and mortars in ancient sites. Their surfaces are polished smooth, worn by generations of hands. Some weigh more than a person can lift, set permanently into the ground. These are not tools of wanderers. They are anchors of place. At Ohalo, too, on the Sea of Galilee, grinding stones dating back 23,000 years preserve traces of flour in their cracks. At Abu Huraira, layers of querns reveal centuries of use. Even microscopic grooves, studied under lenses, show the passage of countless seeds. From these marks, the story emerges. Grain is not a rare treat, but a daily staple, transformed through fire and stone. The work is heavy. Hours are spent bending over slabs, pressing grain into powder. Hands ache, backs stiffen, yet the result sustains life. Flour can be stored, baked, or boiled into porridge. It feeds many more people than raw seeds or scattered fruits. The investment of labor, though great, returns stability. Families survive lean months because fire and grinding stones extend the reach of harvest. A lesser-known detail lies in the bodies of those who used these tools. Skeletal remains from Natufian burials show distinctive patterns of wear. Toes bent from kneeling, knees hardened from pressure, elbows reshaped by repetitive motion. Even teeth carry grooves from holding fibers or chewing unground husks. The bones themselves carry the memory of grain. Human bodies, like the stones they used, bear the imprint of daily grinding. Planetary change remains in the background. As the Holocene begins, atmospheric carbon dioxide stabilizes. Rainfall patterns grow gentler, and plant growth accelerates. The grasses of the Fertile Crescent flourish. Their yields improve naturally, even before deliberate farming. The abundance is global in cause, local in effect. People beside the Euphrates feel it most directly. They do not know of melting ice in distant lands, yet their baskets fill more easily, their hearths burn longer. Fire and stone become tools shaped within planetary rhythms. Still, questions linger. Did people first grind seeds to make them edible? Or did they discover bread by accident? Seeds spilled on hot stones, swelling into flat cakes? Archaeologists debate whether bread making begins this early. In some sites, fragments of charred crust appear, suggesting simple flatbread more than 14,000 years ago. Yet whether intentional or chance, the practice spreads. Over time, bread becomes one of humanity's oldest continuous foods. The presence of grinding stones also signals a subtle shift in settlement. They are too heavy to carry far. Unlike spears or baskets, they remain in one place. When families return season after season, they reuse the same tools. Over years, these stones tie people to specific spots, springs, riverbanks, or sheltered hillsides. From mobility toward permanence, the grinding stone is a marker of change. Fire, too, anchors community. A hearth is more than flame. It is a center. People sit together around its warmth, sharing food, stories, and labor. Ash builds up, layer upon layer, recording centuries of meals. In some villages, archaeologists find multiple hearths clustered together, suggesting neighborhoods within a settlement. The hearth is both household and social hub, a small circle in which larger patterns of life revolve. Seeds, fire, and stone reshape not only diet, but time itself. Where hunting and gathering once followed herds and seasons, now preparation takes hours each day. The rhythm of grinding defines mornings and evenings. The calendar of harvest defines months. Storage defines years. Food is no longer immediate, plucked or hunted in a moment. It is processed, stored, and planned. A new sense of future takes hold. A lesser-known find comes from sites where querns are decorated. Some carry faint carvings of lines or shapes, worn almost invisible by centuries of grinding. Whether symbolic or accidental, they suggest that these tools hold more than function. They may embody memory, identity, or ritual. Perhaps each grinding stone connects to generations who used it before. A lineage marked in stone. The mystery deepens when we consider why humans persisted with such demanding labor. Other foods required less effort. Tubers, fruits, or hunted meat offered quick energy. Yet communities returned again and again to grain. Was it taste? Was it the security of storage? Or did the cycle of sowing, harvesting, and grinding create bonds too strong to abandon? The answer remains debated, but the outcome is clear. Fire and grinding stones bind people to grain, and grain binds them to place. On a planetary scale, one can imagine the sound of grinding echoing across valleys. At dawn, women and men kneel at stones, pushing hand against hand. Sparks rise from hearths into the cool sky. The smell of roasted seed drifts with the wind. Across hundreds of kilometers, in dozens of camps, the same routine unfolds. Separate groups, yet linked by the shared act of turning wild grass into sustenance. The Fertile Crescent in this age is not yet farmland. Fields remain wild, stalks growing where rain allows, but the human relationship with plants is already transformed. Fire makes seeds digestible. Stones make them abundant. Together, they open the path toward cultivation. The story of agriculture does not begin in sudden invention, but in the daily rhythm of hearth and quern. Thus, in the quiet between two rivers, humanity leans closer to the earth. Flames crackle, stones grind, and grain becomes bread. This cycle repeats for generations until what was once innovation becomes tradition, and what was once survival becomes culture. The foundations of farming are laid, one seed, one fire, one grinding stroke at a time. As the Ice Age loosens its hold and climates shift, a new pattern of life takes shape in the hills and valleys of the Levant. Here, between the Mediterranean coast and the Jordan Valley, communities begin to linger. They build stone foundations for houses, dig storage pits, and bury their dead near their hearths. These people are known to archaeologists as the Natufians. Their settlements mark one of the first steps toward permanent village life. The Natufians appear around 14,500 years ago, at the end of the Pleistocene. Their sites stretch from northern Israel and Palestine to western Syria and Jordan. They occupy a region rich in ecological variety: oak woodlands, open steppe, rivers, and coastal plains. This variety provides both plants and animals in abundance. Wild cereals grow thick on the hillsides. Gazelles move in great herds across valleys. Rivers and lakes yield fish and waterfowl. It is a land capable of sustaining larger populations than before. Archaeologists identify Natufian culture by its architecture. At sites such as Ain Malaha, small round houses appear, dug partially into the ground, with stone foundations and brush roofs. Some houses cluster together in groups, forming hamlets that may hold dozens of people. Inside, hearths glow with ash. Storage pits are cut into floors, and grinding stones rest in corners. These are not temporary shelters. They are homes, revisited season after season, and in some cases occupied year-round. Burials provide another mark of permanence. The Natufians bury their dead within settlements, often beneath house floors or beside walls. Graves contain beads, carved bone tools, or animal remains. At Ain Malaha, one burial shows a human laid to rest with a puppy. Among the earliest evidence of a close bond between people and dogs. Such practices reveal ties not only to land but to memory, connecting community and ancestry in one place. A lesser-known detail lies in their cemeteries. Some Natufian sites contain dozens of burials, arranged carefully. Graves are sometimes reopened, bones rearranged, or skulls removed. These acts suggest ritual, perhaps ancestor veneration, though their meaning remains uncertain. The settlements are more than clusters of houses, they are places of identity, where the living and the dead share the same ground. Daily life revolves around food. Natufian houses contain abundant grinding stones used to process cereals and legumes. Archaeologists recover vast quantities of charred seeds, wheat, barley, lentils, chickpeas, alongside remains of figs, olives, and pistachios. Hunting is equally important. Gazelle bones dominate middens, often with marks of butchering. Fish, birds, and small mammals fill out the diet. The diversity of food reflects the richness of the Levant at this time, when climate offered a mosaic of habitats within short distances. Yet abundance is not stable. As climate cools again during the Younger Dryas, resources fluctuate. Some Natufian settlements shrink or are abandoned. Others persist by experimenting. Evidence suggests they may have tended stands of wild cereals near their homes, cutting back competing plants, scattering seeds, or watering fields. Though not yet full farmers, they take steps toward cultivation. Necessity drives innovation. Planetary patterns continue to shape their world. The retreat of glaciers alters rainfall across the Near East. Wetter intervals allow forests to expand. Drier centuries contract them again. The Natufians live at this edge, their lives balanced between woodland and steppe, rain and drought. The Fertile Crescent remains a refuge, but one that demands resilience. Across continents, climates shift. In the Levant, those shifts press directly on villages. The mystery of the Natufians lies in their choice to settle. Why stop moving when mobility had served hunter-gatherers for millennia? Archaeologists debate whether abundance encouraged them to stay, or whether social and ritual ties anchored them. Some suggest that the reliability of cereals and gazelles allowed longer residence. Others see symbolic meaning in building homes and burying dead, creating a sense of belonging that outweighed mobility. The true answer may lie in a combination of ecology and culture. Another lesser-known aspect of Natufian life is their art. Carved stone and bone objects, decorated with lines and geometric patterns, appear in their sites. Beads of shell and teeth are worn as ornaments. Figurines, though rare, suggest symbolic or ritual expression. These artifacts show that Natufian communities invested in meaning as well as survival. They shaped not only tools but symbols, perhaps linking their lives to wider cosmologies. Stone tools also mark their culture. Microliths, tiny stone blades, are set into wooden shafts to form sickles. These sickles bear the glossy sheen of repeated cereal harvesting. The gloss confirms that gathering wild grains was systematic, not casual. Hunting tools also diversify, with projectiles designed for gazelles and other game. The toolkit of the Natufians reflects both specialization and innovation. As settlements grow, social life changes. Larger groups demand new ways of organizing labor and sharing food. Communal hearths suggest collective meals. Cemeteries reflect shared rituals. Trade networks extend outward, bringing shells from the Mediterranean coast and obsidian from Anatolia. These links reveal that even as they settled, the Natufians remained connected to wider worlds. exchanging materials and ideas across hundreds of kilometers. At a planetary scale, the Natufians represent one of the first human cultures to transition from mobility to semi-permanence. Similar patterns may exist elsewhere, yet in the Levant the combination of climate, cereals, and social traditions pushes the change further. Their settlements stand as early experiments in village life, experiments that set the stage for farming societies soon to follow. The bones of their animals carry stories too. Gazelle remains show signs of intensive hunting, sometimes suggesting overuse of herds near settlements. Dog burials reveal bonds of companionship, perhaps aiding in hunting or guarding. The presence of domestic animals alongside human burials marks a shift in relationships between species. Humans, animals, and plants intertwine in new ways, each shaping the other's destiny. Mysteries remain about how Natufian culture ended. Around 11,600 years ago, with the return of warmer climates, their way of life transforms. Some sites evolve into early Neolithic villages, where cultivation and domestication take root. Others vanish from the record, replaced by different traditions. The legacy of the Natufians is not lost, however. Their settlements bridge the world of foragers and the world of farmers. The Natufians remind us that change is gradual. Farming does not appear suddenly, nor does village life. It emerges from centuries of gathering, building, burying, and experimenting. Each stone house, each grinding quern, each decorated bead adds a layer to the story. Together, they form the threshold where humanity steps from one age into another. In the hills of the Levant, under shifting skies, the Natufians light their hearths, grind their seeds, and tend their dead. Their hamlets echo with the sound of life lived in place, rooted more deeply than before. The Fertile Crescent becomes not just a corridor of movement, but a homeland. Here, settlement begins. Here, farming waits just beyond the horizon. In the centuries after the Natufians, people across the Fertile Crescent begin to notice something remarkable. When camps disturb soil, when seeds fall from baskets near hearths, when refuse is left in pits and ditches, new clusters of plants grow. Wild cereal, once scattered in the hills, sprout thickly around human settlements. Slowly, deliberately, or by accident, people learn to scatter seeds in soil. This practice, modest at first, opens the path from gathering to cultivation. The process is quiet. There is no sudden leap, no one moment of invention. Instead, small experiments occur. Families toss leftover seeds near their camps. They notice that disturbed ground, trampled by feet or cleared by fire, produces stronger growth. They pull weeds from around young plants, protecting what they value. Over time, they return to these spots. Harvesting stands more reliable than those left entirely wild. Human hands begin to shape the landscape. If only slightly. Archaeologists detect hints of this change. At Abu Huraira in Syria, dating to the Younger Dryas, rye appears in unusually dense concentrations. Some argue these stands were deliberately encouraged, even cultivated. The grains are larger than wild varieties, suggesting unconscious selection. At Jerf el-Ahmar, also in Syria, evidence shows repeated use of grinding stones, storage pits, and structures suited for holding cereals. The people here may not yet be farmers, but they are already experimenting with the principles of farming. The act of scattering seeds alters human time. Gathering is tied to the rhythms of natural stands, ripening with seasons beyond control. But planting ties people to cycles of soil, water, and growth. They begin to anticipate harvest not just in days or weeks, but months ahead. Patience, observation, and memory grow as essential tools. The seed becomes not only food, but a contract with the future. A lesser-known detail comes from charred plant remains at sites along the Euphrates. Some contain seeds of legumes, lentils, peas, chickpeas, found in contexts suggesting deliberate planting. These crops complement cereals, providing proteins and fixing nitrogen in soil. Their early use hints at sophisticated knowledge of plant variety, even before domestication was fully underway. The first farmers did not begin with one crop alone, but with a spectrum of plants offering resilience and balance. Planetary change frames this innovation. As the Younger Dryas ends and the Holocene stabilizes, rainfall patterns grow more predictable. The Fertile Crescent benefits from winter rains and spring snowmelt, feeding rivers and nourishing soils. Plants thrive, and with them, human opportunity expands. The shift is global. Glaciers in Europe and North America retreat. Oceans rise, and ecosystems reconfigure. In this broader transformation, small human groups find fertile ground for new experiments with life. Mysteries surround these first plantings. Were they intentional, the result of deliberate observation, or accidental, the outcome of discarded refuse? Archaeologists debate whether cultivation began as a conscious decision or an unconscious process of selection. Some argue that necessity, scarcity during the Younger Dryas, pushed people to secure food by planting. Others suggest curiosity and innovation played equal roles. The truth may lie in both. Need sharpened attention, and attention yielded discovery. Tools evolve alongside practice. Sickles with microlith blades are used not only to harvest but to manage stands of grain. Digging sticks disturb soil, making planting easier. Fire clears patches, creating fertile ground for new growth. Over time, such tools become more specialized. Their presence in sites across the Levant and Upper Mesopotamia shows that managing plants is no longer incidental. It is embedded in daily life. The spread of seeds also spreads culture. As groups travel or trade, they carry seeds with them, sometimes deliberately, sometimes clinging in baskets or on clothing. Over distances of hundreds of kilometers, cereals appear in places where they are not native. This dispersal suggests human hands are already vectors of domestication. The Fertile Crescent becomes a patchwork of micro-experiments, each community adjusting plants to its own environment. At a planetary scale, the experiment with seeds is one of humanity's most consequential. For millions of years, life on Earth evolved through natural cycles of mutation, competition, and dispersal. Now, for the first time, a species begins to intervene directly. Humans become co-creators in evolution, guiding the fate of plants that will, in turn, guide the fate of humans. The balance between species begins to shift, marking a new era in Earth's history. Still, risks remain. A crop can fail if rains falter. Birds and rodents can devour seed before it matures. Soil can lose fertility if overused. Early cultivators must learn to hedge against loss, combining gathering, hunting, and planting. Farming is not yet dominant. It is one strategy among many, tested cautiously, refined slowly. The security of planting must prove itself over centuries, before it can replace the mobility of foraging. A subtle but powerful consequence of planting is attachment to land. To sow seeds is to commit to place. One must return to harvest months later. One must guard fields against animals, tend plants, and watch weather. This tie reduces mobility, anchoring families more firmly. Settlements become longer-lasting, and over time, villages grow. The simple act of scattering seeds becomes a foundation for social change. Evidence of communal effort emerges in some early sites. Large buildings, sometimes called community houses, appear at Jerf el Ahmar and other settlements. Their size and layout suggest collective storage or gathering. Perhaps people shared responsibility for tending and harvesting, pooling resources for stability. If so, cultivation was not only a technical experiment but a social one, reshaping cooperation and organization. Another lesser-known piece of evidence lies in phytoliths, microscopic silica bodies within plants, found in archaeological layers. These fragile traces confirm the presence of cereals and legumes where seeds themselves are not preserved. They extend the map of early cultivation, showing that experiments with plants were widespread, even where preservation is poor. Science, like ancient hands, works with fragments, piecing together the story from delicate remains. The mystery that lingers is one of intention. Did people see themselves as changing plants, or did they believe they were simply taking what nature offered more abundantly? The line between gathering and growing is thin, blurred in daily practice. But over time, the consequences accumulate. Plants adapt to humans. Humans adapt to plants. The coevolution unfolds quietly, yet reshapes the destiny of both. Step by step, and the experiments with seeds deepen. What begins as casual scattering becomes tradition. What begins as an accident becomes a practice. By tending stands, people begin to imagine control over growth. By storing harvests, they begin to imagine stability across seasons. By planting seeds, they begin to imagine a future rooted in soil. The age of cultivation dawns not in a single field, but in countless small plots where humans and plants meet. In the Fertile Crescent, under skies shaped by global climate, people bend down to scatter seeds into earth. They cover them lightly with soil, perhaps unaware of the revolution beneath their hands. Weeks later, green shoots rise, clustering thicker than wild fields. The experiment continues, season after season, until what was once chance becomes custom, and what was once custom becomes agriculture. While plants slowly shift from wild stands to tended fields, another transformation unfolds around human settlements. Animals, drawn to the presence of food scraps, water, and shelter, begin to linger near camps. In time, some of these creatures become more than prey. They become companions, workers, and sources of food. The domestication of animals, like the cultivation of plants, begins quietly, step by step, at the hearths of early communities. Dogs are among the first. Long before the rise of farming, wolves had already drawn near human camps. Scavenging remains. Some pups are tolerated, fed, and raised. Over generations, their descendants grow more docile, more attuned to human voices and gestures. By the Natufian era, burials already show humans laid to rest with dogs, suggesting deep bonds. At Ain Malaha in Israel, a woman is interred with a puppy cradled against her arm. The presence of such a burial reveals not only utility but affection, a partnership that extends into death. Dogs may guard camps, assist in hunting, and warn of predators. But they are also family, woven into human society in ways unique among animals. Goats and sheep come later, yet their story also begins near the hearth. Wild goats range across the Zagros Mountains and the highlands of Anatolia. Sheep graze on steppes and hills. Both species, hunted for millennia, are gradually drawn closer. Archaeological remains show that by around 10,000 years ago, bones of goats and sheep in settlements shift in pattern. Younger males are culled, while females are allowed to live longer, evidence of herd management. People are no longer simply hunting, they are shaping herds, guiding reproduction, and beginning domestication. A lesser-known detail lies in the bones themselves. Studies of goat and sheep remains reveal subtle changes, shrinking horns, altered leg proportions, signs of selective breeding. These traits emerge only through repeated human control. They suggest that people, whether by design or by habit, are influencing the very bodies of animals. Domestication is not sudden. It is a slow dialogue between human need and animal adaptation, played out over centuries. Pigs enter this story as well. Wild boars roam river valleys, rooting in marshes and feeding on scraps. Their curiosity and resilience bring them close to human waste and fields. Over time, they too are drawn into camps. In Anatolia and the Levant, pig bones in early settlements suggest herds kept near houses. Their meat, fat, and hides add diversity to diets. Yet pigs also demand management, as their rooting disturbs soil and storage pits. Living so close to humans, they blur the boundary between wild and domestic, nuisance and sustenance. Cattle, the largest of these animals, arrive later. The wild aurochs, massive and fierce, range across Eurasia. To hunt them is dangerous, requiring skill and cooperation. Yet their strength and size make them attractive for domestication. The first evidence of managed cattle herds emerges in the upper Euphrates region. Over time, their role expands, not only as meat, but as beasts of burden, shaping farming economies. But in these earliest stages, they remain more challenge than companion. Their taming a long process yet to unfold. At a planetary scale, the domestication of animals is as significant as the cultivation of plants. It represents another axis of coevolution. Humans shape animal behavior and biology. Animals, in turn, shape human settlement, labor, and survival. Together, they create new ecological niches where species live interdependently. The hearth becomes the meeting point of multiple lives, human, plant, and animal. Mysteries persist. Why did domestication succeed with certain species and not others? The Fertile Crescent hosts gazelles, onagers, and deer, abundant and familiar prey. Yet these species resist domestication, their behaviors unsuitable for control. Some animals adapt readily to human presence, others do not. The reasons lie in temperament, social structure, and breeding cycles. But in the deep past, humans likely discovered this by trial and error, learning which creatures could live beside them and which could not. A lesser-known clue comes from dung. In early Neolithic sites, layers of compacted animal dung are found in and around houses. This suggests that goats and sheep were penned at night, kept within the settlement itself. Such closeness offers warmth and security, but also challenges. Disease spreads easily when humans and animals share space. Parasites and pathogens pass between species. setting the stage for new health burdens. The gift of domestication is accompanied by hidden costs. Bones also reveal patterns of diet. Cut marks show butchering techniques, while burned fragments reveal cooking. In some sites, bones are broken deliberately to extract marrow. In others, patterns suggest selective slaughter of males, leaving females to reproduce. These details speak of planning and control, not random hunting. They tell of minds calculating herds, ensuring survival through balance. Planetary rhythms influence animals as well. Seasonal migrations guide herds of wild sheep and goats. By intercepting these patterns, humans learn where and when to capture or manage them. Climatic shifts alter ranges, pushing animals into new territories where humans encounter them differently. The Fertile Crescent, with its mix of mountains, plains, and rivers, concentrates many species into small space, increasing opportunities for interaction. Dogs, goats, sheep, pigs, and cattle are the main actors in this transformation, but other creatures play roles. Chickens, later domesticated in Asia, do not yet appear here. Horses remain wild on distant steppes, yet within the Fertile Crescent, the animals at the hearth are enough to set change in motion. They provide meat, milk, hides, wool, labor, and companionship. With them, human life takes on new rhythms. The mystery of human-animal bonds goes beyond utility. The burial of a puppy with its owner, or the care of animals too young to survive alone, suggests emotion as well as function. Did people see these animals as kin, as spirits, as allies? We cannot know for certain. But the evidence hints at relationships layered with meaning. Domestication is not only economic, it is social, symbolic, and spiritual. Step by step, the presence of animals alters settlements. Pens are built. Dung accumulates. Herds graze nearby, tethering communities to land. Food becomes more reliable, but life becomes more complex. Diseases spread, labor increases, and landscapes are reshaped by grazing. Forests recede, grasslands expand, and ecosystems shift. The experiment with animals, like that with plants, changes not only human destiny, but the fate of entire environments. At the hearth, where flames glow and food is shared, animals gather too. Dogs sleep at the edge of firelight. Goats and sheep wait in pens. Pigs root at refuse heaps. The sounds of bleating, barking, and grunting mingle with human voices. This is the soundscape of the early village, a chorus of species bound together. In time, this cohabitation will give rise to herding, dairying, and pastoral economies. But in this moment of prehistory, it is still fragile, still experimental. People learn day by day how to live with animals, how to guide their breeding, how to share hearth and shelter. The path is uncertain, but its direction is clear. Humans and animals are no longer separate. Their fates intertwine, shaping one another in ways that will endure for millennia. As seeds and animals become part of daily life, another challenge emerges: how to keep food safe beyond the moment of harvest. Abundance is fleeting unless it can be preserved. In the villages of the Fertile Crescent, new technologies arise: woven baskets, clay containers, and storage pits dug into earth. These inventions transform food from a fragile gift of season into a resource carried across months. They also reshape human relationships with time, security, and settlement. The earliest containers are simple baskets. Reeds grow thick along rivers, pliable when fresh, strong when dried. Stripped into fibers, they are twisted and woven into open patterns. Baskets hold seeds, fruits, and nuts, light enough to carry from field to camp. They leave few traces in the soil, yet impressions in clay fragments and rare finds in dry caves confirm their presence. Basketry is likely older than pottery, born of necessity and available materials. With baskets, people can gather more, carry more, and store more, stretching the limits of what a group can hold. Clay offers another path. When shaped and fired, clay hardens into durable vessels. But even before true pottery, people discover that clay plaster can line pits, seal baskets, or coat walls. These linings protect seeds from moisture and pests. At sites such as Jericho and Tel Aswad, traces of plaster floors and bins reveal early experiments in clay technology. Only later, with firing, will pottery emerge as a major innovation. Yet even in these beginnings, clay alters storage, offering protection and permanence unknown before. Underground pits are another strategy, dug into soil, sometimes lined with stone or clay. They hold cereals for months. Ash or straw may be layered to deter insects. Lids of stone or timber cover openings. In settlements such as Sayonu in southeastern Anatolia, large communal pits suggest collective storage, where food is shared and guarded together. These structures show that food is not only a household concern, but a social one, demanding cooperation and trust. Archaeologists uncover these practices through traces both subtle and clear. Seeds charred in ancient fires survive for millennia, their forms still recognizable under microscopes. Pits filled with discarded husks mark places where storage failed. Clay fragments, bearing basket impressions, reveal the weaving patterns of vanished containers. Each piece testifies to the ingenuity of people who refused to let abundance slip away. The planetary scale underscores the need for storage. As Holocene climates stabilize, harvests grow more predictable, but unpredictability never vanishes. A single drought, a swarm of locusts, or a flood can erase months of labor. Storage becomes insurance against nature's caprice. On a world where weather is still shifting after the Ice Age, stored food grants a new kind of security. It cushions communities against disaster and allows them to plan beyond the immediate season. A lesser-known detail comes from residues found inside ancient containers. Traces of lentils, peas, tea, and chickpeas cling to vessel wall, showing that legumes were stored alongside cereals. Legumes, rich in protein and able to fix nitrogen, add resilience to diets and fields alike. Their presence reveals that storage was not limited to grains but encompassed a broader agricultural strategy. Even in early times, mysteries remain about the scale of these practices. Were storage pits personal or communal? Did families hoard their own grain? Or did villages pool resources? Some evidence points to both. At Jerf el Ahmar, communal structures suggest shared stores. At other sites, small pits inside houses imply household reserves. The balance between private and collective storage may have varied, shaping social dynamics of trust, obligation, and power. Storage also changes human perception of wealth. In mobile societies, possessions are limited by what can be carried. In settled villages, storage pits and clay bins accumulate resources. A family with full bins has security and status. Differences in storage capacity may mark the earliest forms of inequality, subtle but present. Food, once fleeting, becomes property, and property begins to reshape society. The technology of storage extends beyond pits and clay. Silos made of mud brick appear in some early Neolithic villages. These cylindrical structures, sealed against pests, can hold vast amounts of grain. Their presence marks a leap toward urban forms of organization. Though rare at first, they foreshadow the monumental granaries of later civilizations. At a planetary scale, storage alters human energy. It reduces the need for constant foraging, allowing labor to be directed toward building, ritual, or craft. It supports population growth, as more mouths can be fed through lean months. It anchors settlements as pits and bins cannot be carried away. Storage is a quiet revolution, less visible than planting or herding, but equally transformative. Another lesser-known discovery comes from residues of fermented grains. Some scholars argue that beer, not bread, may have been among the first products of stored cereals. At Göbekli Tepe and other sites, large stone vats with residues of starch and yeast suggest brewing. Whether ritual or daily drink, this use of grain reveals that storage not only sustains but creates new cultural practices. The line between necessity and celebration blurs at the bottom of a clay-lined vat. Mysteries extend to the symbolic role of storage. Some pits are found empty but carefully sealed, suggesting ritual closure. Were they offerings to spirits of the earth, or symbolic acts of renewal? Archaeologists cannot be certain. Yet the act of placing food in the ground, waiting, and retrieving it months later carries echoes of planting itself. Storage may have reinforced symbolic connections between humans, soil, and cycles of life. The risks of storage are real. Mold, rot, and insects can destroy entire reserves. A pit opened too soon may reveal ruined grain. Such failures teach hard lessons, spurring innovation. People learn to choose dry ground, line pits carefully, seal containers tightly. They adapt not only their tools but their habits, refining the art of preservation across generations. Step by step, storage reshapes settlement. A camp with filled pits cannot move easily. Families return season after season to reclaim what they buried. Villages become fixed points in landscape, tied to caches of food. From these points, farming will spread, but storage itself is the anchor. It is the commitment to place, the promise of return. In the villages of the Fertile Crescent, the cycle unfolds. Baskets carry harvest from field to hearth. Pits hold seeds through winter. Clay bins guard against moisture. Around the fire, people share meals from stores gathered months before. With each passing year, the knowledge of how to preserve food deepens. Security grows, but so too does complexity. The story of agriculture is not only the story of planting, but of keeping what is planted safe. In the Fertile Crescent, water is both gift and challenge. The rivers of the Tigris and Euphrates surge with seasonal floods. Rain falls in winter, but summers bring drought. The earliest farmers learn that to rely only on nature's rhythms is to live with constant risk. Step by step, they begin to guide water, diverting streams, digging channels, and shaping fields. These first acts of irrigation represent another quiet revolution, one that ties land and people even more closely together. The foundations of irrigation lie in observation. Communities watch how floodwaters spread across plains, leaving rich silt behind. They see how small depressions hold moisture longer, how plants flourish in hollows near riverbanks. They learn to scratch shallow ditches with sticks or stones, guiding water from springs into gardens. At first, the scale is modest. Plots near houses, watered by hand-carried jars or simple channels. But the principle is clear. Water can be moved, and with it life itself can be extended beyond its natural reach. Archaeological traces are subtle yet revealing. At sites such as Chogamami in Mesopotamia, dating back more than 8,000 years, linear channels cut into soil suggest deliberate irrigation. Earlier still, in foothill settlements, pits and small canals hint at water management. The evidence is fragmentary, easily erased by time, yet together it paints a picture of humans beginning to engineer landscapes. The importance of irrigation grows as farming expands. Wild stands of cereals once required only gathering. Tended fields, however, depend on predictable water. Without irrigation, crops fail in dry years. With irrigation, farmers can extend fields away from rivers, cultivating land that would otherwise lie barren. Irrigation is thus both survival strategy and engine of growth. It allows villages to support larger populations, producing surpluses that sustain not only farmers but also builders, craftsmen, and ritual specialists. A lesser-known detail comes from the discovery of small, stone-lined wells near early Neolithic houses. These shallow shafts, dug into gravel layers, tap groundwater. They suggest that even at this early stage, people experiment with more than surface water. By drawing from beneath the earth, they secure supply through dry seasons. Such wells are rare, but they reveal ingenuity and awareness that water exists not only on the surface, but below. Planetary forces shape the background. The Holocene climate brings stability compared to the Ice Age, but fluctuations persist. In some centuries, rains shift north, leaving Mesopotamian plains parched. In others, floods strike with destructive force. These cycles press upon early farmers, forcing adaptation. Irrigation becomes a buffer against uncertainty, a way to smooth out the extremes of global climate in the local field. Mysteries remain about the earliest irrigation. Was it organized communally, with villagers digging channels together, or managed by families for their own plots? Evidence suggests both. Some small ditches serve individual households, while larger canals imply cooperation. The balance between private and collective labor is hard to discern, but it may have laid foundations for later social organization, where water management became a source of power. Water also reshapes settlement patterns. Villages cluster along rivers and springs, places where irrigation is feasible. Over time, these clusters grow into larger communities, linked by shared dependence on waterways. The distribution of early farming sites across northern Mesopotamia mirrors the spread of reliable water sources. Irrigation does not simply support life, it dictates where life can flourish. Tools for water management evolve gradually. Digging sticks, used first for planting, serve to scratch channels. Later, stone hoes and wooden shovels extend the work. Clay vessels carry water to young plants. Over centuries, as techniques improve, entire landscapes are reshaped. By guiding rivers, people begin to transform ecology itself, turning steppe into field, marsh into garden. A lesser-known discovery comes from phytolith analysis, microscopic plant residues preserved in soil. At sites near early canal, concentrations of cereal phytoliths suggest fields cultivated under irrigation. The presence of these traces confirms that channels were not merely drainage but tools of farming. Such evidence, though invisible to the eye, reveals the depth of human ingenuity. The mystery extends to the symbolic meaning of water. Rivers were more than resources, they were forces of life and death, worshipped and feared. Later, Mesopotamian myths speak of gods of rivers and floods. Though these stories come much later, their roots may lie in these early centuries when water was first channeled by human hands. The act of guiding a river may have felt both practical and sacred, a balance between control and reverence. At a planetary scale, irrigation marks a turning point. For the first time, humans are not only adapting to environments but actively remaking them. Fields watered by canals yield more grain than nature alone could provide. Populations rise, villages expand, and societies grow more complex. Yet this power comes with costs: salinization of soil from repeated watering, conflicts over access to channels, dependence on fragile systems. Irrigation is both gift and burden, shaping destiny with double edge. Daily life in early villages reflects these changes. At dawn, families opened small channels, letting water flow into plots. Children carry jars from springs, pouring carefully at roots. Groups repair ditches after floods or storms. Evenings bring the sound of water trickling through fields, mingling with voices around hearths. The cycle of tending plants is now joined by the cycle of tending water, binding human effort to land in deeper ways. Storage pits, clay vessels, and baskets gain new value when paired with irrigation. Larger harvests demand better preservation. Surpluses grow, allowing exchange and trade. Obsidian, shells, and other goods move across networks sustained by irrigated fields. In this sense, water not only feeds bodies but fuels culture, enabling communities to look beyond subsistence toward connection. Another lesser-known piece of evidence comes from pollen analysis in sediment cores. In areas near early canals, shifts in plant communities reveal human influence. Wild grasses decline as cereals dominate. Wetland species increase where channels spread water. The very composition of flora records the fingerprints of irrigation etched into earth for thousands of years. The mystery of scale lingers. Did the earliest irrigation projects support only small gardens, or did they already extend across fields? Archaeologists debate whether large-scale systems arose quickly or over millennia. What is certain is that once begun, the logic of irrigation expanded. Each channel invited another, each field called for extension. Over time, landscapes of natural floodplain became landscapes of engineered agriculture. In the Fertile Crescent, water is life, but also labor. To move it is to bind communities to endless cycles of maintenance. Canals silt up, walls collapse, floods breach dikes. The work is unending, yet the rewards are undeniable. Irrigation stabilizes food, supports growth, and lays groundwork for complexity. At the hearths of villages, people may still speak of plants and animals, but beneath all lies water, the silent foundation of their future. Thus, the story of irrigation begins not with vast canals and cities, but with small ditches scratched into earth, with jars carried from spring to field, with pits dug to catch seepage. These modest beginnings ripple outward, shaping civilizations yet unborn. In the Fertile Crescent, under the gaze of shifting skies and flowing rivers, humanity learns to guide water, and with it, to guide destiny. As farming takes root and irrigation spreads, the Fertile Crescent witnesses another quiet transformation. Small hamlets, once seasonal and fragile, grow into larger, more permanent villages. These settlements, some enclosed by walls and organized into neighborhoods, mark the earliest forms of communal life on a scale never before seen. In them, architecture, ritual, and cooperation intertwine, laying foundations for the rise of cities, centuries later. Among the most striking of these early villages is Jericho, located near the Jordan River. By around 10,000 years ago, Jericho already stands as a cluster of mud brick houses built on stone foundations. The houses are circular or rectangular, with plastered floors and hearths inside. Some are rebuilt repeatedly, layer upon layer, as generations remain in place. Around the settlement rises a massive stone wall, perhaps built to control floods, perhaps for defense. Beside it stands a tower 9 meters tall, constructed of stone steps spiraling upward. Its purpose remains debated. Was it a lookout, a flood barrier, or a ritual monument? Whatever its role, it signals communal effort of extraordinary scale, far beyond what one family alone could achieve. Other sites echo this shift. At Sayonu in southeastern Anatolia, buildings of stone and mud brick cluster in rows, some with unique grill-plan floors made of stone slabs over pits. These structures may have been used for ritual feasts, storage, or community gatherings. The presence of specialized buildings indicates that villages were not just clusters of houses but organized spaces with shared functions. In nearby Göbekli Tepe, though not a village but a ritual center, monumental stone enclosures suggest that social cooperation could extend to projects of astonishing ambition. Archaeologists uncover these villages through layers of debris. Mud brick melts back into soil, but stone foundations remain. Tools, figurines, and plant remains lie buried in refuse pits. The scale of such finds, thousands of grinding stones, hundreds of burials, walls stretching tens of meters, shows that life in villages is qualitatively different from that in camps. Communities now number in the hundreds, not merely dozens. Such density demands new ways of living together. The daily life of villages reflects this density. Narrow paths wind between houses, children play in courtyards, women grind grain at querns, men tend herds in surrounding fields. Storage pits are filled and emptied in rhythm with harvests. At dusk, smoke rises from dozens of hearths, mingling above roofs. The soundscape of the village is no longer only human voices, but also bleating goats, barking dogs, and squealing pigs. The intimacy of life intensifies as families live shoulder to shoulder, bound together by need and tradition. A lesser-known detail comes from plastered skulls found at Jericho and other sites. Human skulls were removed from burials, plastered with lime to recreate facial features, and sometimes painted with ochre. These preserved skulls were displayed in houses or communal spaces. Their meaning is uncertain, perhaps honoring ancestors, perhaps serving as guardians, perhaps reinforcing lineage. Whatever their role, they reveal that villages are not merely economic units but centers of ritual and memory. Planetary changes continue to shape these villages. As Holocene climates stabilize, food surpluses become more reliable. But unpredictability persists. Floods can still sweep away fields, droughts can still wither crops. Villages anchor communities, yet they also heighten vulnerability. More mouths depend on local harvests. Surpluses can feed many, but failures can starve many. Thus, the stability of villages is both strength and risk, a balance maintained by cooperation and storage. Mysteries surround the organization of these early communities. Who decided where houses should be built, when walls should be raised, or how surplus should be shared? Archaeologists find little evidence of hierarchy in the earliest villages. No palaces, no temples larger than communal houses, no burials of exceptional wealth. Power may have been diffuse, shared among households or elders. Yet the scale of projects like Jericho's wall suggests coordination. Whether by consensus, leadership, or ritual authority, villages had mechanisms to mobilize labor beyond the family. Architecture itself reveals shifting social values. Round houses of earlier periods gradually give way to rectangular ones. Rectangular plans allow expansion, alignment into streets, and more efficient use of space. This architectural change, subtle but widespread, signals new patterns of thought, ways of organizing both buildings and people in orderly grids. Villages thus reflect not only practical needs but also emerging concepts of structure and order. Another lesser-known discovery lies in figurines found in village contexts. Many depict women with exaggerated features, often interpreted as fertility symbols, though interpretations vary. Others depict animals or abstract shapes. These small objects, carried or displayed, suggest that symbolism permeates daily life. Ritual and belief are woven into village existence, guiding how communities understand themselves and their place in the world. At a planetary scale, the rise of villages alters humanity's relationship with Earth. Populations cluster in fixed points, consuming resources more intensively within surrounding territories. Forests are cleared for fields, grazing expands across hills, and wildlife patterns shift. The ecological footprint of a village extends far beyond its walls. For the first time, human impact on landscapes becomes enduring, visible even thousands of years later in pollen records and erosion layers. Mysteries remain about the motivations behind monumental building. Why did early villagers invest in towers, walls, and communal halls before they had true states or rulers? Some suggest defense against neighboring group. Others point to ritual or symbolic needs, with structures serving as expressions of identity or cosmology. The true answer may combine all. Villages sought to protect themselves, to define themselves, and to connect themselves to forces beyond. Daily routines reflect both labor and cooperation. Fields must be sown and tended, herds watched, water carried, ditches cleared. Grinding grain consumes hours each day. Yet shared feasts, communal rituals, and collective building projects balance the toil. Life in villages is demanding, but it offers security unknown to smaller camps. Together, people withstand hardships that alone they could not endure. The lesser-known presence of disease also enters this story. With many people and animals living closely, pathogens spread more easily. Archaeological remains of skeletons show signs of stress, malnutrition, and injury. Dental remains reveal cavities from cereal-heavy diets. The village offers abundance, but also new health burdens. These costs, though invisible in the triumph of settlement, shape the daily reality of its inhabitants. The first villages thus embody both promise and peril. They provide stability, surplus, and social richness, but also labor, inequality, and vulnerability. They mark the threshold between forager life and urban life, between mobility and rootedness. In their walls and towers, in their plastered skulls and communal halls, lie the seeds of civilization itself. At sunset, the villages of the Fertile Crescent glow with firelight. Smoke drifts from roofs, fields stretch beyond, and herds return to pens. And children's voices fade into evening, and the hum of insects rises with the night. Within these quiet scenes, profound change unfolds. Humanity has built its first villages, and with them, a new chapter of history begins. As villages spread across the Fertile Crescent, life becomes denser and more complex. Families no longer live in isolation, but side by side, bound by fields, water, and walls. Social bonds deepen within settlements, while networks of exchange stretch far beyond them. What was once a patchwork of foragers moving seasonally now becomes a web of villages connected by ties of kinship, trade, and ritual. These bonds help sustain communities through hardship and allow ideas to travel across landscapes. The evidence of exchange is clear in the materials found in early Neolithic sites. At Sayonu and Jericho, obsidian blades appear, sharp and glossy, sourced from volcanic flows in Anatolia hundreds of kilometers away. Along the Levantine coast, shells from the Mediterranean are found far inland, carried into villages where no sea is visible. At other sites, beads made of greenstone or malachite gleam, materials absent from local geology. Each object speaks of journeys, some direct, others passing hand to hand across networks of trust. Such networks are not merely economic. They reinforce bonds between groups, creating obligations and alliances. To exchange obsidian for grain or shells for hides is to weave relationships that may be called upon in times of scarcity. In an unpredictable world, where harvests can fail and herds can scatter, connection is security. Villages, therefore, thrive not in isolation, but in communion with others. Within settlements, bonds are strengthened by cooperation. Irrigation ditches require collective maintenance. Harvests demand coordinated labor. Communal structures, such as those at Jerf el Ahmar, serve as gathering halls for feasting or decision-making. These buildings, larger than any dwelling, suggest that social life extended beyond the household. Villagers came together not only for work, but for shared meals and rituals, reinforcing identity as a community. A lesser-known detail comes from plastered floors found in communal buildings. Some show layers of repainting, each generation renewing the surface. Beneath them, deposits of animal bones and charred seeds suggest feasting. Such feasts may have celebrated harvests, sealed alliances, or honored ancestors. In them, food becomes more than sustenance. It becomes a bond of solidarity, binding individuals into groups larger than kin. The planetary scale underscores the significance of these bonds. As populations grow and settlements multiply, the spread of ideas accelerates. Farming techniques learned in one valley move to another. Knowledge of irrigation or storage passes along networks. Even symbols, figurines, ornaments, burial practices travel across distances. Humanity becomes not only local, but regional, stitched together by lines of communication. The Fertile Crescent becomes a cultural corridor, bridging Africa, Anatolia, and Mesopotamia. Mysteries remain about the mechanisms of exchange. Were goods traded through direct barter, through gift-giving, or through itinerant specialists? Archaeological evidence suggests all are possible. Some items, like obsidian, appear in quantities too large to be casual. Others, like a single marine shell buried with a child, may carry symbolic or personal meaning. Exchange may have been as much about social connection as about material value. Within villages, bonds are also reinforced by ritual. Plastered skulls, figurines, and decorated tools indicate shared beliefs. These symbols are often found in households, but their recurrence across sites suggests common traditions. Whether fertility cults, ancestor worship, or other rituals, they unify communities through shared meaning. Social cohesion rests not only on practical cooperation, but on the intangible glue of belief. A lesser-known find comes from Çatalhöyük, slightly later than the first villages but reflecting earlier traditions, wall paintings and reliefs depicting animals and geometric shapes. Though younger, they hint at symbolic systems already forming in the Neolithic. If such art existed in early villages, it would have served to mark identity, tell stories, or transmit knowledge. Even without writing, walls and objects could carry memory and meaning across generations. The mystery of leadership also arises. In groups of hundreds, how were decisions made? Archaeologists find little evidence of kings or chiefs in early Neolithic villages. Burials do not show vast differences in wealth. Houses are of similar size. Yet the construction of communal halls and large projects implies coordination. Perhaps leadership was situational, emerging during harvests or construction. Perhaps ritual specialists or elders guided communities. Without texts, we cannot know, but the very success of these villages testifies to effective cooperation. At a planetary scale, these networks of bond and exchange prepare humanity for urban life, the capacity to manage labor, to share resources, and to maintain ties across distance lays the groundwork for cities and states. Villages are the first nodes of a network that will one day span continents. They embody the principle that survival depends not only on soil and water, but also on trust and connection. Daily life reflects this principle. A woman grinding grain may use a quern passed down from her grandmother. A man hunting gazelle may carry an obsidian blade sourced from far mountains. A child may wear a shell bead carried inland from the sea. Each action, each object, connects the household to broader networks of time and space. Villages are local, yet their lives are entangled with distant places. Another lesser-known detail is the presence of exchange in ritual contexts. Some burials contain exotic materials, shells, pigments, rare stones, perhaps gifts from other groups. Such offerings may have reinforced alliances, ensuring that relationships extended even into the realm of the dead. In this way, exchange was not only practical, but spiritual, binding communities through shared acts of remembrance. Mysteries linger about the scale of these connections. How far could goods travel? Evidence suggests hundreds of kilometers. Obsidian from Anatolia reaches Jericho, more than 500 kilometers away. Such distances imply either long journeys or complex chains of exchange. Each path represents human mobility, curiosity, and persistence, linking landscapes into one shared world. Social bonds also shape the way knowledge is passed. Farming is not self-evident. It must be learned. Which seeds to plant, when to water, how to harvest, all required teaching. In villages, knowledge is transmitted not only within families but across networks. Travelers carry ideas with them, spreading practices beyond their place of origin. This flow of knowledge, invisible yet vital, ensures that farming spreads from the Fertile Crescent to lands beyond. At sunset, the life of a village reflects these bonds. Families gather for meals, neighbors share tools, visitors bring shells or stones from afar. Stories are told, rituals performed, disputes resolved. In these acts, the village is more than houses and fields. It is a community sustained by bonds of trust, obligation, and exchange. Without these bonds, farming alone would falter. With them, the foundations of complex society are laid. Thus, the rise of villages in the Fertile Crescent is not only about plants and animals, walls and towers. It is about people learning to live together, to share, to trade, and to trust. Social bonds and exchange form the fabric that holds the first farming societies together. In that fabric lie the threads that will one day weave cities, states, and civilizations. As villages expand and fields spread across the Fertile Crescent, farming becomes central to daily life. The promise of abundance is real. Stored grain, managed herds, and irrigated fields can feed larger populations than foraging ever allowed. Yet abundance comes at a cost. Farming demands labor, narrows diets, and introduces new forms of vulnerability. The weight of farming settles on human shoulders, altering bodies, health, and society in ways both subtle and profound. The work of farming is relentless. Fields must be cleared of brush and stones, furrows scratched with digging sticks or hoes, seeds scattered, weeds pulled, water guided, pests driven away. Harvest requires long hours of cutting, bundling, threshing, and winnowing. Afterward comes grinding, storage, and constant vigilance against rodents or rot. Unlike foraging, which allows mobility and diversity, farming binds people to cycles of toil that stretch through the year. In this shift, life becomes more predictable, but also more demanding. Archaeological evidence reveals the toll on bodies. Skeletons from early farming communities show signs of stress unknown in hunter-gatherers. Vertebrae display compression from bending and lifting. Knees and hips bear arthritis from repetitive motion. Teeth show cavities and enamel wear from cereal-heavy diets rich in carbohydrates. Microscopic grooves in bones match the posture of grinding grain for hours each day. Farming sustains larger populations, but it reshapes human health in lasting ways. A lesser-known detail lies in dental remains. At sites such as Abu Huraira, teeth show rapid wear and cavities from stone grit mixed into flour. Grinding stones shed tiny particles that entered bread and porridge, wearing teeth down to roots. Farmers, though surrounded by food, often lived with chronic pain, abscesses, and tooth loss. Such details remind us that abundance does not mean ease. The narrowing of diet is another burden. Foragers once enjoyed a wide range of foods: fruits, nuts, roots, meat, fish, and wild greens. Farmers rely heavily on cereals and legumes, supplemented by milk and meat from herds. While calories increase, variety decreases. Deficiencies in vitamins and minerals become common. Evidence of anemia, stunted growth, and disease appears more often in skeletons from farming villages than in those of mobile foragers. Farming feeds more mouths, but not always more healthily. At a planetary scale, farming intensifies human impact on environment. Forests are cleared to make fields. Grazing animals strip hillsides of vegetation. Irrigation, though productive, leads to salinization of soils, reducing fertility over generations. These transformations ripple outward, altering ecosystems that once flourished freely. Humanity's footprint deepens, reshaping landscapes in pursuit of food security. Mysteries surround why communities persisted in farming despite its burdens. Some scholars argue that population pressure left no choice. As villages grew, hunting and foraging could no longer sustain numbers. Others suggest that farming offered security in unpredictable climates, ensuring survival through storage. Still others point to social forces. Farming supported feasts, rituals, and exchanges that reinforced bonds. Perhaps the weight of farming was endured not only for survival, but for the promise of community and identity. A lesser-known discovery comes from isotopic analysis of ancient bones. Ratios of carbon and nitrogen reveal diets dominated by cereals in early farmers, with less protein than in foragers. These scientific signatures confirm what tools and seeds suggest. Farming narrowed diets, even as it expanded populations. The paradox is clear. More people survive, but each carries heavier burdens of labor and health. Disease also spreads more easily in villages, with humans, animals, and waste in close quarters. Pathogens find fertile ground. Archaeological remains suggest rising levels of tuberculosis, parasites, and gastrointestinal diseases in early farming communities. Domesticated animals contribute new zoonotic infections, passing germs across species. Farming stabilizes food, but destabilizes health, weaving hidden costs into its promise of abundance. Yet farming also brings resilience in new forms. Storage pits and silos guard against famine. Herds provide milk, meat, and hides even when harvests fail. Irrigation extends cultivation into dry seasons. These buffers allow populations to grow, even in face of challenges. The weight of farming is heavy, but its rewards are enduring enough to anchor humanity to the land. At a planetary scale, farming represents a new phase of human adaptation. For the first time, a species transforms ecosystems intentionally, trading freedom of mobility for control of environment. The consequences extend far beyond the Fertile Crescent. As farming spreads, forests retreat, grasslands shrink, and wild species decline. The biosphere itself is altered, setting the stage for the Anthropocene. Mysteries linger about the psychological impact of this transition. Did early farmers see their lives as harder than those of their foraging ancestors? Did they value the security of stored food above the freedom of mobility? Without writing, their thoughts remain unknown. But bones, tool, and settlements tell of lives both sustained and constrained by farming. The balance between gain and cost was lived in every harvest, every aching back, every worn tooth. Another lesser-known glimpse comes from ritual practices tied to farming. At some sites, figurines of animals and women are found in storage areas, perhaps as guardians of grain. Offerings of seeds accompany burials, suggesting symbolic connections between cultivation and life cycles. Farming reshapes not only work and diet but also belief, embedding agriculture into cosmology. The weight of farming is carried not only in muscle and bone, but in spirit and tradition. Daily routines reflect this new reality. At dawn, villagers rise to tend fields, leading herds to pasture. Children fetch water, women grind grain, men repair ditches or guard crops. Evening brings meals of bread, porridge, and lentils, eaten together at hearths. The rhythm is steady, unyielding, tied to soil and season. Farming is not a task, but a way of life, inescapable and continuous. At sunset, fields ripple with grain, herds return to pens, and villages settle into quiet. Yet beneath the stillness lies labor, unending. Every stalk cut, every seed ground, every jar stored represents hours of work. The abundance of farming sustains life, but its demands shape the destiny of those who practice it. Thus, the story of the Fertile Crescent is not one of simple triumph. It is a story of balance between reward and burden, abundance and toil. Farming feeds more people, builds larger villages, and enables exchange, but it also narrows diets, spreads disease, and binds communities to labor. The weight of farming is the weight of civilization itself, carried forward from these first fields into every age that follows. As villages deepen their roots in the soil of the Fertile Crescent, daily life revolves around fields, herds, and hearths, yet alongside labor and survival, another dimension grows, one of symbols, rituals, and meaning. Farming ties people to cycles of birth, growth, and decay, rhythms that inspire practices of belief. The earliest farmers shape not only landscapes but also traditions, leaving traces of ritual that endure in earth and stone long after their voices are gone. Archaeologists uncover these traces in unexpected places. At Jericho, human skulls are found carefully plastered, faces reshaped with lime, eyes recreated with shells. These skulls are displayed in houses, perhaps honored as ancestors or protectors. At Çatalhöyük, slightly later, but within the same tradition, walls are painted with animals and geometric shapes, and burials are placed beneath floors. These acts suggest that houses are not mere shelters, but sacred spaces where living and dead share ground. Farming villages are not only economic units, they are theatres of memory and ritual. Symbols appear in portable objects as well. Small figurines, often depicting women with emphasized features, are found in houses and storage areas. Some scholars interpret them as fertility icons, linked to the cycles of crops and reproduction. Others argue they are household guardians, symbols of continuity rather than specific deities. Whatever their meaning, their presence in farming villages reveals that life is not defined by work alone. Belief permeates every corner, from fields to hearths to graves. A lesser-known detail comes from carved stone bowls and bone tools decorated with lines, zigzags, and animal motifs. These designs, though modest, show intentional symbolism. They suggest that early farmers carried meaning in their tools, embedding art into objects of daily use. In this way, the act of grinding grain or cutting plants was not only practical, but also embedded in a web of signs and associations. At a planetary scale, the rise of ritual in farming communities mirrors broader changes in human life. As populations settle, memory accumulates. Places become layered with events, births, harvests, deaths, feasts. Over time, these layers demand recognition, and ritual provides it. Symbols anchor memory, ensuring that stories survive beyond individuals. Humanity, now tied to land, begins to create traditions tied to both earth and ancestry. Mysteries surround the meanings of these symbols. Did plastered skulls serve as reminders of lineage, or as intermediaries with unseen forces? Were figurines offerings to ensure fertile crops, or were they representations of community itself? Archaeology preserves objects, but not their interpretations. Each symbol is a question, each ritual an echo. The uncertainty itself reminds us that meaning is as fragile as bone and clay, often lost even when the artifacts endure. Feasting is another ritual practice that emerges in early villages. At sites such as Göbekli Tepe and Jerf El Ahmar, deposits of animal bones suggest large gatherings where many animals were slaughtered at once. Feasts may have marked harvests, alliances, or rituals of renewal. In such events, surplus food becomes more than survival. It becomes a tool of community and spirituality. By eating together, villagers affirm bonds, not only with one another, but with forces they perceive as greater than themselves. A lesser-known discovery comes from residues of fermented grain found in stone vats. Some scholars suggest that beer, brewed from early cereals, played a role in ritual feasting. If true, the link between farming and celebration is deep indeed. The same crops that demand toil by day also provide drink for ritual by night, blending labor and meaning into one cycle. Symbols also appear in architecture. Communal buildings at sites like Sayonu feature unique floor plans, with stone slabs arranged in grids or patterns. Some are associated with deposits of bones or artifacts, suggesting ceremonial use. These spaces, distinct from ordinary houses, imply that communities invested effort in places reserved for ritual. The act of building itself may have been symbolic, reaffirming unity and belief. At a planetary scale, symbols and rituals help knit together larger groups. Farming brings population growth, but also new tensions over land, water, labor. Ritual provides cohesion, offering shared practices that transcend family boundaries. In this way, belief becomes a tool of survival, no less vital than storage pits or irrigation ditches. Societies that honor shared symbols are better able to withstand the stresses of density and labor. Mysteries also linger about the relationship between farming and cosmology. Did the cycles of crops inspire ideas of rebirth, death, and renewal? The burial of seeds in soil, followed by their return as plants, may have echoed in rituals of human burial and ancestor worship. Farming ties people to cycles more visible and predictable than foraging ever did. It is possible that agriculture reshaped not only bodies and diets, but imaginations as well. Another lesser-known piece of evidence comes from pigments found in burials and houses. Red ochre, long used by hunter-gatherers in ritual, continues into the Neolithic. Its persistence suggests continuity of symbolism, even as lifestyles changed. Farming did not erase older traditions, but absorbed them, weaving ancient symbols into new contexts of settlement and cultivation. The rise of rituals also has social implications. Leaders may emerge as ritual specialists, guiding ceremonies, managing feasts, or curating symbols. In societies without kings or temples, ritual authority may provide cohesion and subtle power. The presence of communal structures and shared feasts suggests that early farmers relied on ritual to coordinate labor and maintain order. Even before formal institutions arose, daily life intertwines with these practices. A family planting seeds may whisper words of hope or leave small offerings in fields. At harvest, gatherings may include dances or songs, marking the turning of season. In houses, figurines may be placed near hearths, silent guardians of home and grain. Ritual is not separate from life, it is embedded in every act, reminding communities of cycles beyond individual control. At night, in villages scattered across the Fertile Crescent, the glow of hearths illuminates symbols carved in wood or clay. Skulls plastered with faces rest in corners, silent presences among the living. Outside, fields lie in darkness, seeds awaiting rain. Within these quiet scenes, farming societies shape not only economies but imaginations, crafting rituals that make sense of the weight they carry. Thus, symbols and rituals are not minor details of early farming, they are central to its story. They transform fields into sacred landscapes, houses into sites of memory, and food into instruments of solidarity. In them, we glimpse the human need to create meaning, even amid toil. The first farmers of the Fertile Crescent are not only cultivators of soil, they are cultivators of belief, sowing traditions that will echo into the civilizations yet to come. By the late Neolithic, the scattered villages of the Fertile Crescent have grown into settlements of remarkable size and complexity. Fields of wheat and barley surround them, herds graze nearby, and irrigation channels cut across plains. Within these communities, life is dense, structured, and enduring. What began as small clusters of houses has become the foundation of urban life. The path from field to city is slow, spanning centuries, but unmistakable in its direction. One of the most telling examples is Çatalhöyük, located in central Anatolia. Though slightly later than Jericho, it embodies the momentum of earlier traditions. At its height, Çatalhöyük holds thousands of people, with houses packed tightly together, sharing walls, and entered through rooftops. Narrow passages weave across roofs like streets in the air. Inside, walls are plastered and repainted regularly, decorated with images of animals, geometric patterns, and occasionally human forms. Burials lie beneath floors, sometimes accompanied by ornaments or pigments. The entire settlement is a tapestry of life, memory, and ritual layered over centuries. Earlier in Mesopotamia, villages expand into towns. By 7000 BCE, sites like Tel Hassuna and Tel Halaf show organized neighborhoods, storage facilities, and communal areas. Pottery appears, durable and decorated, marking another shift toward permanence. Pottery allows food and water to be stored, cooked, and transported more easily, expanding both diet and trade. With pottery, farming surpluses can be managed with greater security, sustaining populations beyond immediate needs. Architecture evolves alongside. Round houses give way to rectangular buildings aligned in rows, forming proto-streets. This change reflects more than efficiency. It reflects a new way of imagining space, structured and orderly. Rectilinear design allows expansion, standardization, and planning. The logic of the grid, faint at first, foreshadows the layout of cities. A lesser-known detail comes from plastered bins and silos built into houses. These features, designed to store cereals and legumes, signal an increasing focus on household accumulation. In villages like those on the upper Euphrates, some families build larger storage than others. This uneven distribution suggests the beginnings of inequality. Wealth is no longer measured only in relationships but in quantities of grain. The seeds of hierarchy, like the seeds of wheat, take root in these early communities. At a planetary scale, these settlements mark a turning point in humanity's impact. Forests are cleared for expanding fields. Grazing reshapes hillsides. Irrigation alters soil chemistry, in some areas leading to salinization. The density of human life produces waste, attracting pests and changing local ecologies. Where once humans were scattered lightly across landscapes, now they cluster in hubs of lasting presence. These hubs are ecological as well as cultural nodes, altering the balance of life around them. Mysteries remain about how such large communities managed cooperation. Thousands of people living together require rules, organization, and shared identity. Yet in these early towns, archaeologists find no palaces, no temples dominating skylines, no kings buried with treasures. Authority may have been diffuse, grounded in households, elders, or ritual leaders. Communal feasts, plastered skulls, and shared shrines suggest that belief and tradition provided cohesion. Leadership may have been persuasive rather than coercive, grounded in ritual authority rather than state power. Another lesser-known discovery comes from obsidian. At Çatalhöyük, vast amounts of obsidian are found, sourced from Cappadocian volcanoes. Blades, mirrors. And ornaments of obsidian indicate both craft specialization and trade networks spanning hundreds of kilometers. The presence of so much obsidian suggests that Çatalhöyük was a hub in regional exchange. Surpluses of grain supported craft specialists, who in turn fueled trade, linking distant communities into economic webs. This integration of farming, craft, and trade is the skeleton of urban life. Pottery decoration also reveals social expression. Designs of lines, waves, and symbols appear repeatedly across sites, suggesting shared cultural traditions. Some motifs spread widely, perhaps carried along exchange routes. The repetition of symbols across distances reflects cultural cohesion, even before writing exists. Pottery thus serves not only practical needs, but also as a medium of identity and connection. At a planetary scale, the shift from villages to towns represents a leap in complexity. Humans are no longer only adapting to environment, they are creating environments of their own. Entire landscapes are restructured into mosaics of fields, canals, houses, and storage facilities. Within these structures, new forms of social life arise: specialization, inequality, ritual centers, and long-distance exchange. Cities, though centuries away, are already taking shape in these patterns. Mysteries still surround the role of ritual in these communities. At Göbekli Tepe, massive stone enclosures are built, not for habitation, but for ceremony. Though older than Çatalhöyük, they overlap with early village life. Their presence suggests that ritual sites may have been central to the emergence of large communities, binding groups through shared belief. Did towns grow around shrines, or did shrines arise within towns? The relationship is unclear, but the intertwining of ritual and settlement is unmistakable. Another lesser-known aspect is the shift in burial practicing. In many early villages, burials occur beneath houses, but in larger towns, cemeteries separate the dead from the living. This distinction reflects new spatial organization, separating domestic and ritual space. It also suggests growing complexity in how communities conceive of life and death. Cities will later devote vast areas to temples and tombs, but the seeds of that separation are visible here. Daily life in these growing settlements is both familiar and new. Fields still demand sowing, irrigation still requires labor, animals still need care. But now, some villages specialize in pottery, others in obsidian, others in ritual. Children grow up in crowded neighborhoods, surrounded not only by family, but by hundreds of others. Meals are shared in households, but festivals bring entire communities together. The rhythm of life is both agricultural and social, tied to cycles of season and cycles of settlement. At night, the glow of hearths stretches further than ever before. Where once a few houses dotted valleys, now hundreds of fires illuminate dense clusters of homes. Smoke drifts into the sky, carrying the scent of bread, meat, and burning dung. From fields to rooftops, from shrines to storage bins, these villages hum with life. They are no longer temporary experiments. They are the foundations of permanence. Thus, the Fertile Crescent becomes the cradle not only of farming but of urban life. Fields yield surpluses. Surpluses support specialists. Specialists sustain trade, and trade connects regions. Architecture evolves, rituals intensify, and inequalities emerge. The step from fields to cities is not sudden but gradual, carried on the backs of countless farmers, potters, herders, and builders. In their labor, the blueprint of civilization takes form. In these first towns, humanity learns to live together in numbers never before imagined. They learn to share space, manage resources, and create meaning in dense communities. From these lessons will rise Uruk, Babylon, and countless cities beyond. But here, in the early Neolithic villages of the Fertile Crescent, the first outlines of cities are drawn, etched not in stone monuments alone, but in fields, hearths, and the bonds of daily life. The story of the first farmers in the Fertile Crescent does not end with their villages, fields, and herds. Their legacy ripples outward, carried across generations and continents. What began as scattered experiments with seeds and animals becomes the foundation for civilizations that follow. Even today, echoes of their choices are present in landscapes, in plants, in animals, and within the human body itself. The lives of those early cultivators continue to shape our world. One echo lies in the crops themselves, wheat and barley, first gathered and planted in the valleys of the Tigris, Euphrates, and Levant, remain among the world's most important grains. Their domestication began with subtle changes, seeds that clung to stalks instead of scattering, kernels larger and easier to grind, plants tolerant of cultivation. Over centuries, these traits spread into Europe, Asia, and beyond. Today, every loaf of bread, every bowl of barley soup carries within it the inheritance of the Fertile Crescent. Another echo lies in animals. The goats, sheep, pigs, and cattle, first drawn into human settlements, became global companions, from the mountains of Anatolia to the plains of Africa and the steppes of Asia. These animals travelled with farmers. Their bodies changed, smaller horns, gentler temperaments, new coat patterns, signs of human selection. In turn, they changed human life, offering milk, wool, hides, and labour. Even dogs, already present as companions, found new roles guarding herds and households. The relationships begun at ancient hearths still define much of rural life across the planet. A lesser-known detail is hidden in DNA. Studies of modern humans reveal genetic traces of adaptation to farming life. Genes linked to starch digestion, lactose tolerance, and resistance to certain diseases spread among populations that relied on crops and herds. These changes, etched into the genome, testify to the intimate bond between biology and culture. Farming did not only reshape landscapes, it reshaped humanity itself. At a planetary scale, the spread of farming transformed Earth. Forests once stretching unbroken across Europe and Asia gave way to fields. Grasslands that supported herds of wild animals shifted under the grazing of domestic flocks. Rivers were redirected, soils enriched and depleted, landscapes terraced and irrigated. The biosphere, long shaped by climate and geology, became increasingly shaped by human intention. This shift marked the dawn of a new ecological order, with humans as primary agents of change. Mysteries remain about how this legacy spread so swiftly. Within a few millennia, farming radiated outward from the Fertile Crescent into Europe, North Africa, and South Asia. Did farmers migrate, carrying their plants and animals with them? Or did local foragers adopt the practices through contact and trade? Archaeological evidence suggests both, waves of people moving and waves of ideas spreading. The speed and scale of this expansion remain debated, but the outcome is clear. Farming became global, reshaping diverse cultures in countless ways. Another echo lies in social patterns. The first farmers created villages, and those villages grew into towns. Over time, towns became cities, and cities became states. Systems of storage, cooperation, and ritual established in the Neolithic evolved into bureaucracy, religion, and governance. The tower at Jericho, the communal halls at Sayonu, and the shrines of Göbekli Tepe foreshadow the temples and palaces of later Mesopotamia. The roots of urban civilization lie directly in the soil of those first fields. A lesser-known clue comes from isotopic analysis of ancient skeletons, showing migration patterns within early farming communities. Some individuals grew up far from the villages in which they were buried. This suggests that mobility and exchange persisted, even as settlements became permanent. The Fertile Crescent was not only the birthplace of farming, but also a crossroads of movement, blending diverse groups into new cultural identities. The legacy of those first farmers also includes inequality. In their villages, differences in storage, access to land, and ritual authority laid the groundwork for hierarchies. While no kings or empires yet existed, the seeds of power and wealth were sown. In later centuries, these seeds would grow into stratified societies, where surpluses supported elites, craftsmen, and armies. Thus, the blessings of farming came intertwined with burdens of division. At a planetary scale, farming also set in motion the rise of population. Hunter-gatherers, living in small bands, supported limited numbers. Farming, with its surpluses, allowed exponential growth. Within a few thousand years of its invention, global population multiplied several times. Humanity's presence expanded into new regions, pressing on ecosystems and reshaping biomes. The balance of life on Earth tilted as one species began to dominate in numbers and impact. Mysteries linger about the spiritual transformations that accompanied farming. Did cycles of sowing and harvest inspire early myths of rebirth and fertility? Did irrigation and floods shape stories of creation and destruction? Later Mesopotamian epics, with their gods of agriculture and rivers, may echo beliefs already forming in Neolithic villages. The symbols found in figurines, plastered skulls, and decorated walls hint at a cosmology tied deeply to farming, but its exact form is lost to time. Daily life in those first villages carried both joy and burden. Fields provided bread, but demanded labor. Herds gave milk and meat, but spread disease. Rituals offered meaning, but required constant renewal. In their choices, the first farmers wove together survival and culture, creating a fabric that endures to this day. The echoes of their lives are not distant abstractions. They are baked into every field of wheat, every woolen garment, every sip of milk. Another lesser-known perspective comes from pollen analysis in sediment cores taken near ancient sites. These records show shifts from wild forests to cultivated landscapes, confirming the scale of human impact. In some cores, traces of cereal pollen appear abruptly, marking the onset of farming. In others, fluctuations reveal cycles of use and abandonment, suggesting that not all experiments endured. These records remind us that farming was not a single discovery but a patchwork of trials, some succeeding, others fading. At sunset in those early villages, the echoes of future civilizations are already present. The sounds of grinding stones, the sight of fields rippling in wind, the smell of bread baking on hearths, all are elements of a way of life that will define humanity. Though their scale is small, their impact is vast, radiating outward across millennia. Thus, the first farmers of the Fertile Crescent leave more than ruins and artifacts. They leave a legacy inscribed in plants, animals, genes, landscapes, and societies. Their echoes resonate in every meal, every settlement, every story of origin. What began as experiments beside rivers grew into the foundation of civilization. The weight they carried, the choices they made, continue to shape the world we inhabit today. The story of the first farmers is both distant and intimate. More than 10,000 years separate us from their fields and hearths, yet their presence lingers in every grain of wheat, every flock of sheep, every town built upon land once wild. They did not know they were founding civilizations. They sought only to endure, to find security in seed and herd, to bind their lives to soil and season. Yet their quiet choices reshaped humanity's path forever. The Fertile Crescent was not unique in its fertility, yet it became unique in its legacy. Its rivers and plains provided the setting where people paused, learned, and transformed. The echoes of those first steps spread outward, carried across continents until farming and settlement became the dominant rhythm of human life. From Jericho to Çatalhöyük, from the Zagros to Mesopotamia, the arc of the crescent bent into the shape of history itself. Still, mysteries remain. Why here and not elsewhere first? How did rituals and beliefs and social ties grow alongside crops? What knowledge was carried in stories we can no longer hear? Archaeology gives fragments, but the whole remains unseen. Perhaps that is fitting. The past is not a closed book, but an open landscape, where questions endure like seeds awaiting rain. Tonight, the fields of the Fertile Crescent lie silent. The rivers still flow, the hills still bear almond and pistachio, the winds still scatter grains of wild barley. The farmers who once walked here are gone, yet their legacy endures in every harvest across the world. In the quiet of evening, their story is not distant. It is alive in the food we eat, the homes we build, the bonds we share. And so the story rests, still echoing, still shaping, still unfinished.